Hello and welcome. I'm fresh off the heels of a hard campaign playthrough here. My hero deck is level 35. I've got campaign gear, nothing special. These are just a quick look at my stats here. I've skipped the bonus maps for this playthrough, so I'm actually a bit lower level and less geared than if you played through Glitterhelm that you would be. I want to jump into Survival Ancient Mines on Insane Hardcore, but I can't yet because I have to play through it on the campaign first, so gonna jump in with hardcore off to do that first. It's a pretty easy win, just a few protons, 5 DU each in each lane, along with an ensnare on the single lane where you get the ogre, a couple of DSTs on a buff beam with a wall and a reflect are gonna get the job done. So now that I've got the victory in campaign, I can jump into Insane Survival Hardcore on for the good loot and a wave 1 start. Of course, gotta start wave 1 if you haven't touched it yet. A 3 DU wall going on the single lane here with a 5 DU proton beam. The proton beams are a handy tool for getting these early waves out of the way quick and easy. I do a 5 DU EV wall in the double lane with a couple of 5 DU proton beams as well. These first several waves are pretty uneventful. I just lay in the protons for this in an effort to try to burn through these early waves quick because they're a little bit boring, if I'm being honest. I used to avoid survival leveling in early game in survival because of how long it took to get through the early waves. Usually I wouldn't touch survival on Insane, but since the Xbox release, it's a lot faster. A couple of ensnared ores in each lane as well. Still piling in the protons here. I'm building mid-wave in an attempt to save some time. A few 5 DU protons in the single lane here. They get the job done. Another one in each lane on the other side as well. This is kind of similar to what I would do for campaign at this point. I'm keeping them clustered here because I want to put them all on the same overclock. I use a 6 DU overclock to give myself some room to play with. I'm not trying to commit to a small area yet. I do show a full wave 23 start at the end for a more concise version of the build, but I wanted to show how I got through the whole thing. Here's a 5 DU overclock on these 4 protons here, and I'm just using up the rest of my DU with more protons. Just trying to use it, that way I get that XP bonus. And then I've got some reflects going down, 1 DU reflects on each wall to protect them from projectiles, ogres, mages eventually, and archers of course, to help the walls just hold up a little better. And I do G up here and let these waves run. The next several waves are like this. Enemies just come in and die to the beams. It's pretty nice, pretty effective. The ogres are easy enough to take out with my staff. I do have a 4 projectiles at the moment staff, a DPS weapon on this EV to help deal some damage while my defenses whittle down these ogres. It gets the job done effectively enough. I do put some strength drains on each lane. I swap out a 5 DU beam for a strength drain on each wall to help it stay alive longer, but I put the strength drains behind the walls so that I can repair them. Things get interesting here at wave 9. I get some dark elves coming out and I do have to avoid them because they go after you and not your defenses. So between my DPS weapon and being able to kind of jump around on that wooden platform, I do take them out eventually, but I know this is not a sustainable strategy for these, so I know I have to figure something out. There's an ogre on the single lane here, so I take down one of the beams over here and I make my overclock smaller. I move my strength drain back behind the overclock just to be able to repair it easily, get to it better. And then I shorten the beams in the double lane, and I'm going for 8 DU here. I'm trying to clear up 8 DU. That way I can drop a DST here on this wooden plank, and I aim it so that it covers all of the walls. I'm just looking to have it be able to target all of the dark elves because it will prioritize them over everything else. That's the idea. I'm checking my range here. I decide to go ahead and G it up here, and this is effective. It does help. It does prioritize the dark elves, and it deals a lot of damage. But what ends up happening because I shortened my beams is my wall ends up taking a lot of damage, and I didn't realize it first, but I've got mages shooting the wall. I have to hop down and save it, drop a quick upgrade on it. That's why I always leave my walls low level. They can be upgraded for cheap to quickly repair them in an emergency. Here's a good example of that exact thing happening. It's these mages over here shooting the right side of the wall. I didn't realize that my beams being long enough to kill them was what stopped them from eating my wall, so I have to replace my beams a little bit here. I need that long one way out in the lane to reach them. Bit of rearranging and optimization here. I do ditch that reflect and move it over, and I drop an explosive trap here to help out with anything that does make it to the wall. I feel like it's a better use of the DU. Some upgrades here, some minor upgrades, but nothing special at this point, not quite yet. I do swap a beam out here, make it shorter basically to free up 1 DU. That way I can drop a second 1D reflect on the double lane to really fully protect this wall from projectiles and ranged enemies. It just ends up being the case that I've got some from both lanes coming in, so I need an extra reflect there. And I G this up from the same spot on my DST. I do have a speedy gemstone for what it's worth. Speedy or powerful would be great for this. A striking would help too, actually, but this goes way better. The wall holds up nice, and I'm able to just hang out up here and not worry about it. And I do get the rock pet here. That was wave 14 cleared. This rock is nothing special. It's got no power, unfortunately, but it's still great for where I'm at this point. It's got a lot of stats, so still useful. I also got a mask here, which is interesting. Check the chests for accessories. I decided to put the rock on my apprentice because I figure, well, it makes sense to put it on him since everything else seems to be holding up just fine. The auras, traps, and beams don't really need anything right now, but I would like more power on the DST and a bit more range and rate, so that allows me to rearrange my points here, and it just gives me a lot more points to play with for the DST because those Dark Elves are my biggest threat, and the DST is what's handling them for me, so I'm happy with this range. The victory chest after wave 16 ends up being my first piece of legendary gear. Not much, but it is a start. Of course, I can't use it or any of the best gear yet because I'm still not level 60. Here's an interesting change I made. I thought the gap between the reflects lets me jump up and repair things out in the lane very easily, so I like that change. Some upgrades coming in now, nothing too special, but upgrades nonetheless. Less and less common gear, more and more epic and rare gear, so that's better, more points to play with, but nothing too great as of yet. I decided to start tower boosting at the beginning of each wave here on the double lane. Better late than never, but this is a good idea. It gives your lane 20 seconds of boosted power. That's attack power all being increased on all those defenses within the range of that buff. And then the ending here, I'm just showing that you can turtle up, you can hang out behind the wall and repair everything and DPS ogres from the safety of the other side of the wall. I decided to ditch one of the beams and drop an electric aura here. I'm kind of rearranging things on the fly, seeing what works. I like an electric aura here because there's a lot of enemies in a small place and they're not all on the beams. I decided to take away some range and fortify for some power and defense rate. I do have a lot of extra fortify on the auras and traps because it's survival long waves, but it's a little overkill, so I swapped that out. And I replace a 3DU beam here, just angled in to help out with the ogres and other minor enemies, but I think the electric aura is a smart move here. I do have my speedy up to 2 defenses boosted now. The gemstones do buff the beams too, so a speedy or powerful on the proton beams does help. It helps them deal more damage, so when I'm at the wall, it's actually boosting them as well. Here's just a quick look at where my stats have come from the start. Quite a bit more points here, but it's from the minor upgrades in gear and leveling up. I'm getting a handful more points each wave or so, and I'm tacking them in to the high priority stats. But I'm gonna G it up here with the tower boost once again and let the waves run. This is kind of how it goes for the rest of the run. At this point here, I'm at wave 22. I do put an explosive trap in the single lane out from the, I swap out a proton, a 3DU proton. I think diversifying the damage types is better, but that's all that I changed for the run. That's the last major change. Here is the final wave running out, wave 25. I just let the defenses take care of it for me. The last ogre going down here, and that's the victory there. It was a pretty smooth run altogether. I'm a lot happier running survival on the lower difficulties now because it's so much faster. Without realizing it, of course, I forgot to pop the chest for the giraffe. Big rip, but hey, 2:07, about 2 hours, 7 minutes. Not too bad. It would have been way longer before. So I'm level 52 on all of my heroes. Can't use the good gear yet. Here's the full take of legendary gear from that run. Not a ton, but a good amount, enough to make use of for when I actually do hit 60. But I start doing some wave 23 starts from here. Here's the end of my first one. 23 minutes, not too bad, but it's because I took my time building. I popped the chest here for my first giraffe. I guess it's okay. I don't have a reference point for how good they're supposed to be. I put it on the apprentice because I figure he can use the power roll, the rock on the monk for the fort, and def rate and range on him. Makes sense, but 24 minutes total. A million XP, not too bad. Here's another wave 23 start for another giraffe, bringing me up to level 59. Not quite there yet. A better giraffe, slightly better, along with some more legendary gear from the chest. So that's an 18 minute 21 second run there. A little faster. All right, here's the full build. A 3DU EV wall in the single lane, along with a couple of 5DU protons. This is the full build from a wave 23 start. The protons still a great option for dealing damage to the minor enemies. All of this can be on a 4DU overclock beam here, and a 1D reflect, still a good idea for helping the wall out. I do the explosive trap here next on the beam, just barely on the beam, and then an ensnare here, and I do put a strength drain down. I forget about it. The upgrade priority is going to be on the protons, the overclock, and the explosive. Basically anything that deals damage or helps the stuff dealing damage. The DST going down here, covering the walls, a couple upgrades on that right away. And then my 5DU EV wall here, along with one long overclock out on the edge, a 3DU proton, a 3DU proton in the middle, another 3DU proton in the middle on the other side, along with a 5DU proton way out in the lane there. And then all of this can just barely fit on a 4DU overclock. The explosive going down next, just enough range to cover both lanes, and then the ensnare electric going down here as well. 1D reflects covering the wall with the gap in the middle still to allow for access to repairing the stuff in the lanes here. Strength range going down, most of the mana going to the bigger damage dealing stuff, the 5DU protons, the overclock, a couple on the strength drain to help it stay alive. Easier on the electric aura, some upgrades as well, and then I just do one on the ensnares and the wall to give them a little more HP. Gonna start the waves off again like I was before with the tower boost, and then heading over to the DST on my EV to ride out the waves. But here is the victory for this last one here, finishing the last of these wave 23 starts, and now I'm level 62. So I can use all that good gear I've been getting. Got a shield here, and I think my worst giraffe so far, but a giraffe nonetheless. Now all of my builders have pets, and I'm over level 60. A shorter run here, 1539, but that's going to do it for this one. Any questions, leave them in the comments, and thanks so much for watching.